chapter 13. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, When a man shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising or a scab or a bright spot, and it become in the skin of his flesh the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest, or unto one of his sons the priests. And the priest shall look upon the plague in the skin of the flesh, and if the hair in the plague be turned white, and the appearance of the plague be deeper than the skin of the flesh, it is the plague of the leprosy, and the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean. If the bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh, and the appearance thereof be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague 7 days. And the priest shall look on him the 7th day, and behold, if the plague stay in its appearance, and the plague be not spread in the skin, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days more. And the priest shall look on him again the 7th day, and, behold, if the plague be dim, and the plague be not spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scab spread abroad in the skin, after that he has shown himself to the priest for his cleansing, he shall show himself to the priest again. And the priest shall look, and, behold, if the scab be spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprosy. When the plague of the leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought into the priest. And the priest shall look, and, behold, if there be a white rising in the skin, and it have turned the hair white, and there be quick raw flesh in the rising, it is an old leprosy in the skin of his flesh, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He shall not shut him up, for he is unclean. And if the leprosy break out abroad in the skin, and the leprosy cover all the skin of him that hath the plague from his head even to his feet, as far as appeareth to the priest, then the priest shall look, and, behold, if the leprosy have covered all his flesh, he shall pronounce him clean, that hath the plague. It is all turned white, he is clean. But whensoever raw flesh appears in him, he shall be unclean. And the priest shall look on the raw flesh and pronounce him unclean. The raw flesh is unclean, it is leprosy. But if the raw flesh again be turned into white, then he shall come unto the priest, and the priest shall look on him, and behold, if the plague be turned into white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, that hath the plague, he is clean. And when the flesh hath in the skin thereof a boil, and it is healed, and in the place of the boil there is a white rising, or a bright spot, reddish white, then it shall be known to the priest. And the priest shall look, and, behold, if the appearance thereof be lower than the skin, and the hair thereof be turned white, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy, it hath broken out in the boil. But if the priest look on it, and, behold, there be no white hairs therein, and be not lower than the skin, but be dim, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And if it spread abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague. But if the bright spot stay in its place, and be not spread, it is the scar of the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or when the flesh hath in the skin thereof a burning by fire, and the quick flesh of the burning become a bright spot, reddish white, or white, then the priest shall look upon it, and behold, if the hair in the bright spot be turned white, and the appearance thereof be deeper than the skin, it is leprosy. It hath broken out in the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hair in the bright spot, and it be no lower than the skin, but be dim, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And the priest shall look upon him the 7th day. If it spread abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. And if the bright spot stay in its place, and be not spread in the skin, but be dim, it is the rising of the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is the scar of the burning. And when a man or a woman hath a plague upon the head, or upon the beard, then the priest shall look on the plague, and, behold, if the appearance thereof be deeper than the skin, and there be in it yellow thin hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a scall. It is leprosy of the head, of the beard. And if the priest look on the plague of the scall, and behold, the appearance thereof be not deeper than the skin, and there be no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague of the scall 7 days. And in the 7th day the priest shall look on the plague, and, behold, if the skull be not spread, and there be no yellow hair, and the appearance of the skull be not deeper than the skin, then he shall be shaven. But the skull shall he not shave. And the priest shall shut up him that hath the skull 7 days more. And in the 7th day the priest shall look on the skull, and, behold, if the skull be not spread in the skin, and the appearance thereof be not deeper than the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his clothes, and be clean. But if the skull spread abroad in the skin after his cleansing, then the priest shall look on him, and, behold, if the skull be spread in the skin, the priest shall not seek for the yellow hair. He is unclean. But if the skull stand in its appearance, and black hair be grown up therein, the skull is healed, he is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. And if a man or a woman have in the skin of their flesh bright spots, even white bright spots, then the priest shall look, and, behold, if the bright spots in the skin of their flesh be of a dull white, it is a tetter, it hath broken out in the skin, he is clean. And if a man's hair be fallen off his head, he is bald, yet is he clean. And if his hair be fallen off from the front part of his head, he is forehead bald, yet he is clean. But if there be in the bald head, or in the bald forehead, a reddish white plague, it is leprosy breaking out in his bald head, or in his bald forehead, then the priest shall look upon him, and, behold, if the rising of the plague be reddish white in his bald head, or in his bald forehead, as the appearance of leprosy in the skin of the flesh, he is a leprous man, he is unclean. The priest shall surely pronounce him unclean. His plague is in his head. And the leper, in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be rent, and the hair of his head shall go loose, and he shall cover his upper lip, and shall cry, Unclean, unclean. All the days wherein the plague is in him, he shall be unclean. He is unclean. He shall dwell alone, without the camp shall his dwelling be. And when the plague of leprosy is in a garment, whether it be a woolen garment or a linen garment, or in the warp or in the woof, whether they be of linen or of wool, or in a skin, or in anything made of skin, if the plague be greenish or reddish in the garment, or in the skin, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of skin, it is the plague of leprosy, and shall be shown unto the priest. And the priest shall look upon the plague, and shut up that which hath plague 7 days. And he shall look on the plague on the 7th day, if the plague be spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in the skin, whatever service skin is used for, the plague is a malignant leprosy. It is unclean. And he shall burn the garment, or in the warp, or the woof, whether it be a wool, or of linen, or anything of skin, wherein the plague is, for it is a malignant leprosy, it shall be burnt in the fire. And if the priest shall look, and behold, the plague be not spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of skin, the priest shall command that they wash the thing wherein the plague is, and he shall shut it up 7 days more. And the priest shall look after the plague is washed, and behold, if the plague have not changed in its color, and the plague be not spread, it is unclean. You shall burn it in the fire, it is a fret, whether the bareness be within or without. And if the priest look, and behold, the plague be dim after the washing thereof, then he shall rend it out of the garment, or out of the skin, or out of the warp, or out of the woof. And if it appear still in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of the skin, It is a breaking out. You shall burn that wherein the plague is with fire, and the garment, or the warp, or the woof, or whatsoever thing of the skin it be, which you shall wash, if the plague be departed from them, then it shall be washed the second time, and shall be clean. This is the law of the plague of leprosy, in a garment of wool or linen, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of skin, to pronounce it clean, or to pronounce it unclean. Let's go back up to verse 1, and we are continuing from chapter 12. In the separations, yes, in the last chapter we had this, the woman she is separated during her days of impurity. This is as in the childbirth. We'll find out these are laws of separation. There's a time of being clean, and then there's a time of being unclean. In the period of after our uncleanliness, we can wash and become clean, even as we'll find out in this chapter, even in our infirmities or our diseases of the flesh. We will find out in some of the chapters of the book that the children of Israel journeyed 40 years in the desert or in the wilderness. And in all that days, their shoes nor their clothing got old, as we'll find out in this chapter. Even though there was a lot of people in the camp, there was sicknesses and disease seemed to be almost non-existent, and sometimes they were. We're going to look at this as an example God was making, an example being made by Hashem, even in these garments, this sickness that can be in these garments. Of course, the garments, they represent our coverings, or this that we cover ourselves with, used for protection, you might say, used to hide the bareness of ourselves. And as we'll find out, these garments are wove, you might say, in life. But we're going to use this leprosy as a scourge, kind of a form of a punishment, or an example that Hashem is going to make as we go through this chapter. Pick up here in verse 1. And the Lord spoke unto Moses and unto Aaron's son. So once again, it's Hashem that's going to be speaking unto Moses. That's the one that's drawn out. And unto Aaron, that would be his brother, the one of similar understanding. He is the light bringer. 2. When a man shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising or a scab or a bright spot, or it become in the skin of his flesh the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest, or unto one of his sons the priest. Of course, in these days there was no medical facilities. So the act of deciding whether a person was going to be diseased in the flesh or in that nature of things, the attention of it would be brought to the priest. Of course, Aaron's used. Was the first priest, and he is the light bringer, the Shem that will be used here as the priest, and it would be this way for always. Anybody who got sick or believed there was a disease in the flesh, they would come to the priest, and it would be up to the priest or his sons to decide whether or not he was sick. 3. And the priest shall look upon the plague in the skin of the flesh, and if the hair in the plague be turned white, and the appearance of the plague be deeper than the skin of the flesh, it is a plague of leprosy, and the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean. So, if the priest looks at the plague, or at this supposed diseased place of the skin or in the flesh, and if the hair in the plague be turned white, and it look like that it's deeper than just a topical wound, a surface wound, it is the plague of leprosy. So he will have the scourge, or he will have that disease of his flesh. In other words, it is festering unto a wound in the flesh. And the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean. So the priest will be the one who decides whether you're clean or you're unclean. 4. And if the bright spot be white in the skin or of his flesh, and the appearance thereof be not deeper than the skin, the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague 7 days. So there's a bright spot. It's white. Sometimes and this was that triggered these visits to the priest. There is a place in the skin, but it's not deeper yet. It's just a topical wound. We'll find in the flesh itself, and the hairs. Of course, the hairs is going to be that which stands up in it, be not turned white, so they're still their normal color. Then the priest shall shut him up with the plague 7 days. So he's going to be separated, because he may have the plague, he may not have the plague. The priests are going to monitor the individual, find out for 7 days. 7 is always to finish something, to complete it. It would be for a week. Or a period, even in those understandings. 5. And the priest shall look on him the 7th day, and behold, if the plague stay in its appearance, and the plague be not spread in the skin, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days more. So the priest, and that's the ones that stand before the Lord, look on him, and the 7th day, of course, that's that portion that finishes that understanding of his separation, and the plague stays in its appearance, it's not spreading, the plague be not spread in the skin, then the priest shall shut him up for 7 more days. For an additional period of separations, just like when the female was shut up the 14 days for the feminine, we'll find out the man is shut up 7 more days for a total of 2 weeks. 6. And the priest shall look on him again the 7th day, and behold, if the plague be dim, and the plague be not spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. So the priest is going to look at him again the 7th day, in that portion of that understanding, once again in that period of separation, and behold, if the plague it's become isn't spread in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. It's a scab. This scab is mishpakat, and it's just a scurf. It's a spreading of the surface, or a scab, something maybe from an old wound or something. And he's pronounced clean. He's not got nothing wrong with him. He shall wash his clothes and be clean. Once again, there was a fear of injury. There was a fear of getting hurt in those days, because if a person got hurt, got infection, or sick, got some kind of infection in the skin, sometimes it would be a death sentence. 7. But if the scab spread abroad in the skin, after that he hath shown himself to the priest for his cleansing, he shall show himself to the priest again. But let's say that later on the scab spreads, it gets larger in the skin, and after that he's been washed and he's cleansed, he shall show himself to the priest again. So once again he'll come to the priest. 8. And the priest shall look, and behold, if the scab be spread in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is leprosy. So if he returns, we might say that he may have had a wound that was just healing, a single incident or occurrence of this disease, leprosy. As being used here as this punishment, or this scourge in life, or this scourge that can develop or has the ability to spread. 9. When the plague of leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought unto the priest. So we're going to change paragraphs, and we're going to be talking about now when this plague of leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought to the priest. He's going to be brought before these. He is known to have it already. 10. And the priest shall look, and behold, if there be a white rising in the skin, and it have turned the hair white, and there be quick raw flesh in the rising. So the priest is going to look at it, and behold, there's a white rising in the skin. There's the wound or the sore, and the hair in it's turned white. We'll find out that's going to be it's dead there, and there be a quick raw flesh in the rising. So he's got an open wound, and the hairs in the wound are discolored. 11. It is an old leprosy in the skin of his flesh, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He shall not shut him up, for he is unclean. It's an old leprosy in the skin, so he's already got the disease. He's known to have it, and what it is at this portion, when the wounds are open and sore and festering, he is unclean. There's no reason to shut him up, because he is known to have leprosy, and he is simply unclean. During the other portion, the person was not known to have a disease. They were suspected of having the fleshful impurity. 12. And if the leprosy broke out abroad in the skin, and the leprosy cover all the skin of him that hath the plague, from his head even to his feet, as far as appears to the priest. So now, if the leprosy had broke out all over the person and covered him from head to toe, as far as the priest could see, there was no reason to expose yourself too much, as we'll see. So you're already from the soles of your feet up to your head, and this represents the whole body being covered in the leprosy. 13. Then the priest shall look, and behold, the leprosy hath covered all his flesh. He shall pronounce him clean that hath the plague. It is all turned white, he is clean. So at this stage, we'll find out of the leprosy when all of it is turned white, and these sores of white, these are like scars, are on a person. He shall pronounce him clean. He is not he is sound. He is healthy, you might say. This is to be in a state of remission, to be in a state of redemption even. It is all turned white. It is all clean. He is clean. 14. But whensoever raw flesh appears in him, he shall be unclean. But now, whensoever this raw flesh appears in these open wounds, he shall be unclean. And during that stage, he shall be unclean. He shall bear his infirmity. 15. And the priest shall look on the raw flesh and pronounce him unclean. The raw flesh is unclean. It is leprosy. And the priest shall look on the raw flesh and say, yes, this is a period of your uncleanliness. You will be unclean. You have the leprosy, or at this person, or this scourge in the flesh, you have this problem. 16. But if the raw flesh again be turned into white, then he shall come unto the priest. So now, when the raw flesh again would heal, when it would become white, or become in its remission stage, he would come again to the priest. 17. And the priest should look on him, and behold, if the plague be turned into white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean. That hath the plague, he is clean. So when he would come and see the priest later, the priest would confirm and say, yes, this is the stage of remission, you are clean. 18. And when the flesh hath in the skin thereof a boil, and it is healed. We're going to change paragraphs and talk about this boil, or this wound, a sore, and it is healed. 19. And in the rising of the boil there is a white rising, or a bright spot, reddish white, then it shall be shown to the priest. So anytime we have this wound, boil, as it's called, the word is shakin, and it is a burning or to an inflammation of some kind, a swelling that's like an ulcer or a boil, a large wound or sore in the skin. There's a white rising in it. You can see there's an infection in it. A bright spot. It's showing out, this reddish white. That's to show that soreness or that infection in the flesh. Then it shall be shown to the priest. It will be brought to the priest, those that stand before Hashem, and that was their job, to decide what it's going to be. 20, and the priest shall look, and behold, if the appearance thereof be lower than the skin, then the hair thereof be turned white, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. It hath broken out in the boil. So if the priest looks at it, and behold, that appearance of it there below, like it's down below the skin, it's deep infection. The hair thereof is turned white, and we'll find out there's the hair, that's what's standing up, portion of it is dyed. Then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. He has leprosy. He has the scourge of the flesh. It is broken out in a boil. And that's how it's shown itself in this infection of the flesh, as it broke forth in its appearance. To be diseased, like these, we can compare these sometimes. It has been compared to these open sins of the flesh that are committed. 21. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hairs therein, and it be not lower than the skin, but be dim, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. But if the priest looks at it, and there's no white hairs in it, there's no death in it, there's no the lack of color, it be lack of appearance, it be not lower than the skin, it's just topical, but it's dim, yet there's some discoloration, the priest shall shut him up for 7 days. They're going to be separated, see, because we're going to go back to the other ordinance where we're going to figure out just what it is. That's that period of separation. 7 days, that finishes that understanding. 22, and if it spread on the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague. But now if it spreads on the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It's a plague of some kind. 23. But if the bright spots stay in its place, and be not spread, it is a scar of the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. But now if it stays just like it was, there's no spreading in the skin, nothing's changed, he shall be announced clean. He shall be pronounced clean, because it's just the burning, it's just that inflammation, or it's in the skin still. It hasn't spread. It hasn't become a festering sore, something that everybody can see. It's just in that stage of its burning or making itself known. 24. We're going to change subject. Or, now, when the flesh hath in the skin thereof a burning by fire, and the quick flesh of the burning become a bright spot, reddish, white, or white. So now when the flesh hath in the skin this burning of fire, and we'll begin, that's that beginning of them judgments that the Lord's going to begin. They haven't become a festering, open wound in your life yet. But the flesh of this burning has become a bright spot. It's starting to make itself known. It's reddish white, the infection, or it's white. It is infected. 25. Then the priest shall look upon it, and behold, if the hair in the bright spot be turned white, and the appearance thereof be deeper than the skin, it is leprosy. It hath broken out in the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the plague of leprosy. But now let's suppose these open wounds are making themselves known and starting to show. They haven't busted open and started to ooze out their filth yet. The priest will look at it. And if the hair, that part that's standing up in the wound is turned white, it's began to die, or it began to be rooted out, then the priest and it's deeper than the skin. It's more than topical now. It's leprosy. You've got the scourge. That's the infection now. The Lord, it's being used as that example of this judgments to show these open wounds in 1:26, or these infections that are building 26. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hair in the bright spot, and it be no lower than the skin, but be dim, the priest shall shut him up 7 days. But now if the priest look at it, and behold, there's no white hair in the bright spot, it's not that serious, we'll find out that it's starting to bring that out down and root out that which shows the color. But this bright spot, this obvious thing, has not lower than the skin. It's just topical at the time on the surface. But it be dim. There's some discoloration. The priest shall shut him up 7 days. Once again, back to that time of separation, that period when one must be shut up these 7 days. That's that which is going to finish those understandings. When you get in that position, you have to be separated. That's what it says, that you must separate yourself. The priest would do it in those days, but today we must do that ourselves. 27, the priest shall look upon him the 7th day. That's that day, that's that portion of that understanding. And if it's spread abroad in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It's a plague of leprosy. So if the priest shuts him up, that period of time where he's separated, and there's no change, and there's a spreading of it in his flesh, it's growing, we might say. There's uncleanliness. He's got the plague, he's got the scourge, he is unclean. 28, and if the bright spot stay in its place, and be not spread in the skin, but be dim, it is the rising of the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him clean, for it is the scar of the burning. So now if the bright spot stay in its place, it's not spreading, but it's still got some discoloration. It's the rising of the burning. That's that fire. It's beginning to become a problem. He's still clean, but it's just a swelling out. It's a burning in the inflammation, you might see, a sarebet. A sarebet is the burning, or the in a wound or in a sore, as we'll find out. It's just infection. It's the scar. It's a wound in the flesh. I'm going to change paragraphs. 29. And when a man or a woman hath a plague upon the head or upon the beard. So now we're going to be talking about a man or a woman, these things that come from men. Because we're talking about the head. That's where the understanding is. That's where the control is. Or upon the beard. Of course, a woman, doesn't have quite the beard that a man does. But this beard, that's going to be that which covers the face, covers those things that are made plain. 30. The priest shall look on the plague, and behold, if the appearance thereof be deeper than the skin, and there be in it yellow thin hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a skull, it is leprosy of the head or of the beard. Though the priest shall look on the plague, so he's going to look at that wound, or that this problem. And behold, if the appearance thereof it be deeper than the skin, it looked like it's more than a surface problem, but a something that goes below the surface, then there being it yellow hair, thin hair, we'll find out the discoloration of the hair, that which looks like it's dying or being rooted out, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. So the priest will say that he's unclean. It is a skull. It is a leprosy of the head of the beard. So he's got the skull. Skull is simply the rooting out. It's the scurf, the skull or the scurf. It's called the netek. And what it is he has leprosy, and it's it's rooting out the hair. It's killing the hair and rooting them out. Of course, the hair on the head is that which is going to be the glory, to show your glory is being rooted out or done away with. 30, then the priest shall look on the plague, and behold, if thereof be deeper than the skin, and there be in it yellow hair, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is the skull of the leprosy, or the beard. And 31, and if the priest look on the plague of the skull, and behold, the appearance thereof be not deeper than the skin, and there be no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut him up that hath the plague of the skull 7 days. So now if he looks at it, and this skull, or this place where the hair may be that's fallen out, there's no hair in it, there's no black hairs in it, then the priest shall look at it for 7 days. And once again, back to that period of separation, due to the fact that there is some form of infirmity making itself known. 32, and in the 7th day the priest shall look on the plague, and behold, if the skull be not spread, there be no yellow hair, and the appearance of the skull be not deeper than the skin. And once again, he's going to come back that 7th day. That's that portion that finishes that understanding. And look at this plague, look at this infirmity that is in the skin or in the flesh. And if it wasn't spread, there was no yellow hairs, there's no sign of death of the hair. It's just hair's not there. The appearance of the skull be not deeper than the skin, so there's no deeper form of damage than just the surface. 33, then he shall be shaven, but the skull shall he not shave. And the priest shall shut him up that hath the skull 7 more days. So we're going to shaving, to be shorn, to be shaved down. We'll find out, except for the skull, that place that was already showed the infirmity, shave the body down to match it, to see whether or not the hair will grow back. And the priest shall shut him up that hath it 7 days more. So he's going to be shut up, continuing his infirmities, shorn, or having his glory removed. 34, and in the 7th day the priest shall look on the skull, and behold, if the skull be not spread in the skin, and the appearance thereof be not deeper than the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. So on the 7th day after that, he shall look at it again, and if it's not spread in the skin, it don't look like it's getting any worse, it's not deeper than the flesh, the priest shall pronounce him clean. He is clean. He shall wash his clothes. He make himself clean, wash his garments, and be clean. He shall go on his way. 35, but if the skull spread abroad in the skin after his cleansing, so now after he's washed, after he's made himself clean, and it continues to spread. 36, then the priest shall look on him. Behold, if the skull be spread in the skin, the priest shall not seek for the yellow hair. He is unclean. So if it continues to spread, my friend, will find out, if you continue to have these problems, you shall be unclean. There's no reason to look for the hairs that are dying, that's falling out, because 37. But if the skull stay in its appearance, and the black hair be grown up therein, the skull is healed. He is clean, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. But now if the skull stay or remain like it was, and there's some black hair starting to grow, it's starting a beard, or your hair starting to come back, the skull's healed, or that where the hair was falling out, it's healed, it's clean, you're all right, you're going to be okay, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. So he's once again pronounced clean, or whole, or sound. That word is tahar, and it's to be bright. That is, by implication, to be pure, physically sound, clear, unadulterated. Levitically, or biblically, you might say, it means you're not contaminated. Morally, you're innocent, or you're made whole once again. 38. And if a man or a woman, changing subject, having the skin of their flesh bright spots, even white bright spots. So now if a man or woman, it doesn't matter, have these bright spots, suddenly appears these outward showings even white bright spots, even these different discolorations of the skin. 39. And the priest shall look, and behold, if the bright spots in the skin of their flesh be of a dull white, it is a tetter. It hath broken out in the skin. He is clean. So now, if he has these, the priest's going to look at it. And if it's a dull or a slight discoloration, then we'll find that it's a tetter, or it's a pale spot, it's a white scurf. You might say it's a freckled spot. 40. And if a man's hair, changing subjects again. Now, if a man's hair be fallen off his head, he is bald, yet he is clean. So if a man don't have no hair, just all of his hair is falling out, but he is clean. 41. If his hair be fallen off from the front part of his head, his forehead bald, yet he is clean. So just because his hair's falling out on the front of his head don't mean there's something wrong with him. I guess in those days there was a great fear of losing your hair. 42. But if there be in the bald head or in the bald forehead a reddish white plague, it is leprosy breaking out in his bald head or his bald forehead. So now if you happen to see some sores, these open reddish white infections, we'll find out, yes, he has leprosy. He has the scourge in his already bald head or his bald forehead. These things that are in your understandings or before you. Sometimes we just don't see our own problems. 43. Then the priest shall look upon him, and, behold, if the rising of the plague be reddish white in the bald head, or in his bald forehead, in the appearance of leprosy, or in the skin of the flesh. So now he's going to be brought before these, stand before the Lord. Of course, they was the priest, and then he's going to look at this, and he says, yeah, you got this open wound in your flesh, and it's got infection in it, even in your bald head, or your bald forehead. The appearance of it is leprosy. In the skin of the flesh, it looks like leprosy. Anywhere else that would be found in the body. 44. He is a leprous man. He is unclean. The priest shall surely pronounce him unclean. His plague is in his head. So now the leprous man, he is leprous. He is unclean. He's diseased, even in his head. The priest shall surely pronounce him unclean. He's just like anybody else who has it anywhere else in the body. Of course, now we'll find out the plague is in your head. It's in your controls, in your understandings, depending on what you did or what the infraction was. We'll take it that the Lord was putting the infirmity in that place. 45. The leper in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be rent, and the hair of his head shall go loose. He shall cover his upper lip and shall cry, unclean, unclean. And any leper, this one who's diseased in the flesh, of course, would have to do this. He would rip his clothes or rent his clothes, showing now that it's kind of like all hope is lost. He is at the end of his ropes. He can't seem to overcome his infirmities. And he shall let his hair of his head go loose, and this means to be unkept. He shall cover his upper lip. That is a outward show of shame in that understanding, that's what it was used for in those days. And he shall cry, unclean, unclean. He shall make himself known as he goes. 46. All the days wherein the plague is in him, he shall be unclean. He is unclean. He shall dwell alone. Without the camp shall his dwelling be. And all the days and every understanding wherein his plague is in him, he's unclean. He is unclean. He shall be unclean. He shall dwell alone. He shall be separated, set aside, caused to dwell outside the camp. Shall his dwelling be, is not allowed to enter in. We'll find out he is totally polluted in that understanding. We're going to change subjects. 47. And when the plague of leprosy is in a garment, whether it be a woolen garment or a linen garment. So now we find this plague of leprosy had the ability to enter the garments, as we're going to find out. They would not wax old on those children of Israel, but these garments would stay intact. But when this plague was found in the garments, or these outer coverings, these things that protect us, these things that cover our nakedness, you might say, whether it be of the woolen is that which is fleeced from the sheep, or this linen, that which is woven from that which is prepared. The linen garments were generally made from flax in those days, 48, or in the warp or in the woof, whether they be linen or of wool, or in the skin, or in anything made of skin. So if this leprosy be found in a garment, well, it doesn't matter what it's made of, if it's made of wool, or if it's made of linen, that which is woven from plant materials, or in the skin of a flesh of an animal that was used for clothing as well in those days, for coverings. Whether it's found in the warp or the woof. The warp here is going to be the weaves of it. The word is sheti, and it means it's a fixture, but we're talking about is a weaving or of the materials. And the woof is going to be the braiding of the materials. If it's braided, no matter if it's wove or braided. The areb is going to be these things that are braided like a cloth in a cloth, or sometimes things that are mixed in to the cloth causes these diseases. And that's kind of what the woof represents. Other things that get woven in. That's why the commandment was, do not mix your garments. 49. Now, if the plague be greenish or reddish in the garment, or in the skin, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of the skin, it is the plague of leprosy, and it shall be shown unto the priest. So now, if this thing be found, we'll find out some kind of nasty disease that's in this outer garment, this greenish, reddish, infection-looking problem, you might say. It is the plague of leprosy, whether it's in the warp or the woof or anything, any place on it. Actually, it shall be shown to the priest. It's going to be brought to the attention of those immediately. Now, 50, and the priest shall look upon the plague and shut up that which hath plagued 7 days. So the priest would look at it, and we'll find out. He would shut it up. It's subject to the same laws of a person that's going to show it the value of a garment, or the value of these outer coverings that protect a person. But it's going to be separated. It has a same period of uncleanliness as the person did in that understanding. 51, and he shall look on the plague on the 7th day, and if the plague be spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in the skin, whatsoever service skin is used for. The plague is malignant leprosy. It is unclean. And he's going to look at it on the 7th day. Of course, that's going to be that portion that finishes that understanding. We're going to do another little inspection of it. Now, plague be spread in the garment. So it looks like it's diseased. It's got a problem. It's starting to spread. It's in the warp or in the woof. It doesn't matter in the weavings or the braidings of it. Braidings were used to add some strength. But it's in the skin. That also is used for coverings at that time. The flesh or the skin of these animals, which was given to you for that purpose. But whatsoever service skin is used for, it doesn't matter. The plague is malignant leprosy. It's got a problem. It's unclean. It's filthy. It's nasty. 52. And he shall burn the garment, or the warp, or the woof, whether it be wool, or of linen, or of anything of skin wherein the plague is, for it is a malignant leprosy. It shall be burned in the fire. So he shall burn it. That's the judgment. It's burnt with fire. We're going to find out that's what we're going to use it for here is these weavings and these braidings that are given for strength. It doesn't matter where it's wool or linen. Both of these could be bleached out and made white, but this skin, because these clothing, these coverings are used as these protections we take to ourselves to cover ourselves with. And if it breaks out in disease or sickness, we'll find out it's going to be a malignant leprosy. It's going to be burnt. It's going to be destroyed. And one must acquire a new garment. 53, and if the priest shall look, and behold, the plague be not spread in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of the skin. But now the priest looks, and behold, it's not spread. It's not getting no worse. It looks like it's very limited to just one little spot. It's not in the braid, or in the weavings of it, or any other portion of the skin that was used for the coverings. 54, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing wherein the plague is, and he shall shut up, and he shall shut it up 7 days more. So the priest is going to take it now, and he's going to go wash the garment. We're going to make it clean, to dip it in the waters, give it some understanding. We're going to wring it out. 55, and the priest and shut it up 7 more days. 55, and the priest shall look after the plague is washed, and behold, if the plague have not changed its colors, the plague be not spread, it is unclean. You shall burn it in the fire. It is a fret, whether the bareness be within or without. And the priest looks at it after it's been washed, and behold, the plague's not changed its color. It's still the same looking discoloration of infection in it. The plague's not spread, even though it's not spread. It's unclean, because the washing didn't take it out. It didn't remove it. It stayed within it. And you shall burn it with fire. You'll cast it into the judgment. It shall be destroyed. It is a fret, whether bareness within or bareness without. Of course, the fret here is a paketet, and it's a hole caused by mildew, most likely, in the garment. It's a hole on the inside. There's something missing within the garment, and you'll have to destroy it. 56. And if the priest look, and behold, the plague be dim after the washing thereof, then he shall rend it out of the garment, or out of the skin, or out of the warp, or out of the wool. So now the priest looks at it, and looks like it did clean it out and do something. It's destroyed. It's dead. But then now he's going to rend it out. He's going to cut it out, take that portion out of it, and you'll be allowed to patch it. 57. And if it appears still in the garment, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of the skin, it's a breaking out, and you shall burn it. Burn that wherein the plague is with fire. But if it's still in the garment, if it's still there, then ain't nothing changed. Then you're going to burn it. Cast it over into the fire. It's to be destroyed. 58. And the garment of the warp, or the woof, or whatsoever thing of the skin it be, which you shall wash, if the plague be departed from them, then it shall be washed the second time, and shall be clean. So now if the garment of the warp and the woof, this weaving and these braidings, all this thing, anything made of skin and flesh, it be, and you've washed it, and it's gone, it's not there no more, it cleaned it out totally, you can't even see it, you shall wash it again the second time, and we will witness the second washing as to a way to thoroughly clean it, to make sure it's cleaned 100%, and it shall be clean. 59. Then this is the law. This is the law of the plague of leprosy in a garment of wool or linen, or in the warp, or in the woof, or in anything of the skin, to pronounce it clean or to pronounce it unclean. And this would be the instructions, the law, the Torah, for the plague. This scourge of leprosy that gets in the garment or in these outer coverings of wool, don't matter where we get it, fleece the sheep for it, or in these linens, whether we weave it finely ourselves, or in the warp, these weavings, that's where it gets in it, or in the woof, these braidings, because sometimes they mix these things in together and they get diseased, or in anything of the skin, these that were given in the beginning to cover the flesh. These things, they are taken from animals, but to pronounce it clean or unclean, to decide whether or not it's going to be destroyed or not destroyed. But we're going to move forward. Leviticus chapter 14. Turn and return.